foster home to that foster home, that's having some anchor to keep them
Absolutely.
feeling, I don't know, just feeling like they've got
Yeah.
somebody.
Consistency. Exactly. Because it happens a lot. They shift homes very quickly. My 8-year-old just did a little drive or harassment, I'm not sure which one, with our neighbors because he knows what I do as volunteering, and he collected suitcases from all of our neighbors because the kids, when they do move, they move with all of their possessions in plastic bags. They typically don't have suitcases. And so there's no dignity to that. So he went neighbor to neighbor and got all of the old suitcases to donate to our Child Protective Services, so at least the kids will have suitcases when they move. So I was pretty proud of.
Do you see what you are doing? You are creating a culture of this. This isn't just like, oh, I'm giving back, I volunteer. But you're creating generations of this, and you're giving those gifts to your kids that then will continue it on with their kids, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I absolutely hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, we'll follow them around and make sure it's fine.
Well, they're already going to blame me for their counseling, so I needed to do something.
Might as well just get it in early.
Yep.
So there was, after you started, I know we don't want to talk about your cases or anything like that, of course,
No.
but what are some of the things was there ever a time where you felt you couldn't do it, even though, like, how do you walk away? How do you make sure you're still taking care of you while you're giving back like this? How do you balance that?
It's interesting. It takes an emotional toll on you. And some cases are more tedious than others. And after my last case, I actually am taking a very short break. I need to kind of refuel, get myself together, and kind of deal with some things with my kids and my family. And so I am taking a break, and that's not uncommon. There are some cases that go 3 years. There's some that go 6 months. It was a perfect time. My case had ended. It ended in one of the most positive ways. So there was a reunification with family, which is amazing. And I just decided this was probably the perfect minute to take a break. Yes. Absolutely.
You need to be advocating for that. Yeah, I think it's going back to the family is the most important. That's how it has to be done.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter how crazy you think the family situation is. Every child wants to go home, period.
And how do you manage that, knowing, does the family get counseling through through CASA as well? Or is this, you guys obviously have to make sure that they're going back into a safe environment. But absolutely. I mean, even if, I've had foster dogs before or something where I'm like, I look at the foster family coming in and I'm like, they're not going to give them as many treats as that. Like, and that's animals. Right. But like, how do you do that? How do you hand these kids over even back to a situation where it's going to be better for them because it is their family? But yeah, how do you do that with making sure that they're going to be okay?
It's a very long road, and there are a number of hoops that everyone has to jump through. The bar is set high. Everyone from the attorney ad litem's for the children to the attorneys for the parents and, the state, everyone is involved at every step of the way. And, weekly reporting on, are the people doing what they needed to do? Are they doing what they were asked to do? And so there's no easy feat. It's very difficult to have so many people in your personal life watching you walk through probably the worst time of your life. So I try to be as helpful as possible and, keep it light when possible. But ultimately, it ended in such a positive manner because, the family was so receptive and went above and beyond, just literally above and beyond to get the kids back. And that is the very best case scenario.
That must just fill you up.
It does. It's awesome. It is absolutely awesome.
What are you going to do for you on your break?
Well, that's a nice thought. Good question. Who knows? I'm really taking my break because my son is going through some changes right now, and I really need to focus on him and help him get set up for success with his education and things like that. So my break is just kind of a pivot to yet another job. So I'm now mom advocate full time.
I was gonna say, because your son is a highly intelligent young man,
He
if I
is.
remember correctly, and I know that. Look, I've got some children, a couple of my kids that are on IEPs, and
Mm-hmm.
they have that extra support. But to your point,
Yep.
some children who do well in school but may have some other areas where they need more growth and
Yeah.
support, that is not given to them in these public schools because it's not an academic issue. And so,
Yeah.
moving on to advocating now for your own child in that area, um what steps and what ways, because you are obviously a mover and a shaker, so I can just imagine you're in there shaking it up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Our situation is somewhat unique because my oldest, John, had learning differences. And we knew very early he was ADHD. Like, he couldn't sit on his pockets, and he was an early reader, but, he had the wiggles. And so we kind of knew something was going on. So he had a teacher that was very much like a drill sergeant. So, we addressed the ADHD and the world was perfect. The heavens open, harmony. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, something's not quite right. And there's always more than one, typically, a diagnosis. It's never a single thing. But he was also very bright. And it took till seventh grade for everything to crash and burn. And what we discovered in seventh grade is he had a bouquet of learning differences that he was just bright enough to compensate and get under the radar. I literally asked the school district to test him for dyslexia 3 times. And they wouldn't, because his spelling grades were too high and he read too well. But what they didn't see is the 11 o'clock at night tier session, and spelling words just to the point of him being nauseous and all the extra time that we were pouring in. So when I figured it out, I just kind of broke down in tears because he was like a salmon swimming upstream all that time. And it was way harder for him than it was for anybody else. So I had that in my back pocket when I looked at this child, knowing something's not quite right. So he was also
And this is
read
for
very early.
Braxton?
For Braxton. He read very early. He was a Montessori kid, and they just do amazing things with them. So it's always, you sit back and go, wow, I didn't know you could do that. But there was just something. So we got him evaluated, and we learned several things. We learned, he is a 2E kid. So he is definitely gifted from an intellectual perspective. But we also learned that he had anxiety. And I had never experienced a child with anxiety before. I'm like, you have no wife, no mortgage, what are you anxious about?
What could possibly be wrong with you?
All is right in the world. Yeah, so I didn't really understand how to work with that or what the symptoms were. And then in treating the different conditions and treating his ADHD, because he as well was ADHD, we were exacerbating the anxiety with the medications. So it has literally taken us 3 to 4 years to just figure out the right situations to make him successful. In the meantime, I will tell you that he has had some of the worst school experiences because he's highly emotional and reactive and really in tune with when he was on a teacher's nerves or, they didn't have patience with him. He's very good at reading that. So his school experiences haven't been fantastic. And oftentimes, what's really interesting about kids who are very bright, they don't reach their potential. So his academics aren't stellar. I literally met with the head of his school today, and they're going, he's not living up to his potential. We're not really sure if we're going to invite him back. But he just took a test 2 weeks ago, which is the national, private school entrance exam, and aced it. However, his work doesn't reflect that. So it's really a struggle because it's a bunch of contradictions.
So is he at a private school right now? Is that what I'm hearing?
He is in a private school. And even that, I worked really hard to find the right school setting for him. And they told us when I got him evaluated, you will have to educate him differently. You will have to challenge him. He's going to need structure. He's going to need this, that, and the other thing. So we worked really hard. I went through like a 4-month just process raked me over the coals to get him admitted into this private school. He's been there since kindergarten. He's now a second grader. And it has been a nonstop struggle. The struggles have changed over the years, but it's still a struggle.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing with private schools, it's very sad because I went through the same thing. Is they don't have to take your child, right?
Yep.
Because if you sit
Yep.
there and say my kid has ADHD, which mine did as well, and he had
Mm-hmm.
oppositional defiant disorder, and we had all these
Mm-hmm.
things, but an intelligent kid, and they're like,
Absolutely.
we can't facilitate him, or we can't take him, or we don't have the resources for that. And
Yeah.
it is a very frustrating place to be in. And so when
Big
like I
time.
moved to the public school system, and I still in that place had to advocate and push and push. And even with my
Absolutely.
second child, I had to even, and you say seventh grade, there's something about seventh grade that reveals these struggles, because I feel like sometimes I felt like
Yes.
there was always something going on or something was amiss.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Yeah.
he was skating by. And when I would go to
Yes.
them and say, but something's not right, and they're like, but
Yes.
his reading scores are this, and his math scores, so he's
Absolutely.
in the range, and there's no flags. But when he got to seventh grade,
Absolutely.
something switched, and it was all revealed. All of the things that he was,
Yep.
and it's the same thing: the late night cries,
Yep.
the tantrums because of the work, and my kid is more of a
Absolutely.
processing situation, but though
Mm-hmm.
we had to go outside. Like we had an in school
Mm-hmm.
assessment that I requested. They didn't see any findings. I had to find an advocate, have them review the
Mm-hmm.
paperwork for them to tell me, oh, they didn't do this right and they didn't do that right. I had
Right.
to
Right.
push the district to give me a outside assessment. That took 6
Mm-hmm.
months to get that approved. And then
Oh yeah.
we are finally meeting. This was a year later. We are finally meeting with
Wow.
that psychologist that did the outside assessment for his findings. So it's been a year
My
since the time I
goodness.
requested the outside assessment, and now that we've gone through the process and he's done all of the things, and the teachers and us and him, and now we're gonna find the things out on Friday.
So how do you what are some of the
That's
things, like,
yeah.
Brooke, I want to hear more about that too, but I want to hear, like, how do you guys feel? Like, I'm not in this situation yet, but I have very young ones, 7 and 4, where they right now everybody's just like, well, they're not autistic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they would show
Yeah.
so right now there isn't like ADHD, they're not recognizing any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Cece has late night cries, but she's also a Pisces, so I'm like, I don't really know. So
There.
and a female. And so what do you guys feel like needs to be done in this in the system for you to feel like you're being heard off the bat? And what were the anxiety symptoms for you, Darlene, where you started to spot and you knew you had to talk to somebody about it?
Well, I went to the district 3 times to test my oldest son, John. They refused. And so, as a single mom, it is incredibly expensive to get that full psychoeducational battery.
It's like
I
five
had to
grand.
save up for it and get it. Yeah, I had to get it myself. I had to pay for it myself because they refused to test him. So I made the investment, and that's when we discovered his bouquet of learning, all the things that I suspected were true. So, for me, it was a relief just to know what was going on, to have a name for the things that we were seeing, and to really be able to go, this is just the way your brain works. You're not stupid. It's not, anything else. It's just the way neurologically you're built, and you're still really bright. And that it tore his self-esteem down, but it made me feel, number one, like I was crazy. Like, I know something's up with my kid. And then you have the professionals going, no, 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 absolutely not. And something was up with your kid. So I think, number one, education. And I think it's better now than it was when my 21-year-old was in 7th grade. But still, it's really easy to brush things under the rug. I've literally had teachers tell me, oh, no, it's normal, like developmentally still. And I'm going, I'm not really sure. So I think really being aware of your child and where their markers are, their developmental milestones are, and following your gut as a mom. I think as a mom, you know. And, there's certain things you see that you're like, I don't know what I see, but it's not right.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
in those circumstances, you have got to be the one that's just pushing and pushing and pushing. I mean, I'll tell you, we, we've been down this road. I mean, he's 16 now, but man, we found that out when he was 5. And we went
Yeah.
through, it wasn't until, honestly, he's a sophomore now, and it's not until his sophomore year
Wow.
that